Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Rise and Grind. I'm 72 the Architect, and today we're going to talk about approved and denied. Well, we constantly go through this life condition every single day, but how are we treating it and how are we going to use it to our advantage? So stay tuned here in just a moment. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Rise and Grind. 72 the Architect back in the house, live producing on YouTube and Clubhouse, as well as Facebook and Twitter spaces. So if you're in any of those spaces, you can definitely take the moment to really enjoy. And I just want to encourage you to think about a few things going forward. So we all are approaching now the fall and approaching winter holiday season. Time change has taken place for a lot of us, and for those people in those places that where they do time change. And one of the things that I heard, the first thing coming out of some people's mouths as I was in some certain spaces, I looked at how they approached the time change yesterday. Like, oh, I feel so just not so great. It feels later or earlier or something. And and I said, "Oh, really? So it's Sunday. Are you working today?" And they would be like, no, I'm not really working today, but still, it's just the time change. Ugh." So it's kind of like they're complaining about, like, in a way that it's like you're being jet lagged in a way. And anyone who's ever flown and got out and did something, went to a far place where it might be 2 hours ahead, 4 hours behind, or maybe even half a day ahead of you. So when we look at these things, why is it so important? And I think that it's very important to look at how we approach anything, whether it be a complaint or like, I'm excited for today. I'm excited for Monday. I'm looking at Monday as a great possibility or something that I really get to explore. And I had to wait till Monday to get started. And I'm not always cheery. I've definitely been through my ups and downs, just like anyone. But how we approach our self-approval and denial is something that we're gonna take on. And a lot of people will, or let me say, not a lot of people. I've heard many people talk about approval, and with approval, they will go through steps, how to's. How did you do this? Top 10 steps of success, how to approach money. Is money an attitude or an object or a tool? And the list goes on and on and on. And so when I look at approval, where is my emotional state of being? When I start the day off, am I in approval first of myself? And why it's so important for me to start the first couple hours of my day, it's let me activate in approval. And this is purposeful. Sometimes I go being depressed and I have to, like, kick myself right in the butt and get going. But when I look at all these different things, I look at the potential. Like, when I feel down, it's like a passenger on a train. He comes in and they go through and they pass through and they get off. Just like happiness, all those emotions. So, how much of our life is based on approval and denial? What about the in between? Is very important. Like this weekend, I saw The Rock's movie, a Black Adam. And one of the things that I really liked about Black Adam, I heard so much bad reviews about it, but I actually was very, very impressed about Black Adam because it showed, without giving too much of it away, it showed the anti-hero. For a long time, we've looked at life as hero and villain, but there is an in between. And the reason why we've created stories like using heroes and villains is the contrast, good and bad, evil and good, better and worse. There's always two options. Even when we look at the political systems today that we operate, Republican versus Democrat, but those are not the only options. There's always a third option or more. So when we look at these things and we look at what we apply ourselves, even our daily living, how much of it is based on people are directed towards earning money. And when I think about when they're earning money, what does the money serve? What does it do for you? Does it grant you more doors open? Does it allow you to live a lifestyle that you can approve of? And along the way, we buy things, we entertain things, we engage in things that hopefully might make us more prosperous, might make us happier. What really comes down to if you're approved and denied. So, and it can really be the pivot between you getting into an argument or a disagreement and having people follow you. The new social currency is based on the visual optics of who you are. Like, for example, many people get their jobs, their positions through applications. They use like LinkedIn. They use what is it? Salesforce. They use a lot of different avenues to get approved so that they can take a position and take a role so they can further themselves, whether they're paying for their home, their car, supporting their family. It goes on and on and on. But how do we really treat approval and denial? When we get denied, are we associating with failure? And does failure really mean a bad thing? And I don't always think it is. Sometimes failure means it was the best thing for me at the time. And it was an option that I necessarily don't need to, explore. But when I look at what is taking place, when I look at who and to do what and where and when, then I look at, hey, this is my life. And if I give myself approval first, the people that I serve and that serve me will also understand what are my metrics? What are my core values? What are my, my modus operandi? And that's it. That's something that's very important. But denial is also very important because it's a scale, a limitation. Do better, spend a little bit more time in study, craft the experience better, or maybe it might prevent you from actually doing something worse, right? And I have definitely gone through those denials. Some of my past relationships, I don't know why I had to reflect on them, but they were brought up either by my choice or someone else bringing up a conversation that where it was in a place where it was, I need to reference this. How do I like me and my significant other, we looked at, how we look at approval and denial, and then how we kind of got into a subject matter about when people cheat. Why do they cheat? Why do they do what they do? Why do people make emotionally bad decisions that cost them so much? And we I think that the common ground that we got to was approval of their emotional state of being. And some people, they just can't honor a real relationship. But I'm not going to get hung up on that. But the point is that when I look at approval, I look at it's a pass. When I look at denial, being denied, not approved, I look at is there work need to be done? Number one, was it a process that was not meant for me? Number two, and number three, did I entertain something that I just wanted and curious about that maybe I need more time on? So I look at it those three critical areas, and also that approaches our belief system. All my life, I was taught from very little go to church. My mom, I can remember my earliest memories of my mom taking me and my brother and sister going to church. Church was a place where my mom, as a single mother, my dad wasn't stepping up. My mom treated church as a refuge. And that also was very important. And when people realize that approval to explore hope, to look at I need relief, show me the way, you know, give me assistance. I'm facing struggle. All that struggle got my mom later in life a few things. One, she was able to buy her own home. She crafted her experience to becoming a professional. She worked in several government agencies. She was able to provide for 3 kids, so there was a lot of denial, but along with denial, there also comes with a caveat: failure. How we hold on to things, how we treat each other. You know what I'm saying? And when I look at those things per se, when I look at being denied, when I look at I'm not qualified, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was very, very important, you know, when I saw my mom going through denial, that it either made her work harder or made her recess and hold on to bad stuff that did not belong to her. That was also very important pivots. They were things that the denial sometimes taught me places I didn't need to be, you know? And that's the thing is like when we look at denial and failure, it can be a horrible experience and it will live longer than the moment deserved. I've seen denials and failures constantly plague people for 40 plus years, right? Think about that for a minute. How much trauma do people hold on to from being denied? You know what I'm saying? Like it's it's one of those things that it's either you're going to learn to process and do better or you're going to continue and it's going to follow you and it's going to be like a chain and ball and it's heavy everywhere you go. And if you look at that process, then guess what? You'll spend a lifetime trying to shed it, you know. My friend Gabe and colleague, Gabe says, what does Gabe say? He says, do you think that denial is trauma that can be passed? Yes, absolutely. I've seen mothers and I've seen fathers, I've seen grandparents literally shed a level of shame onto their kids, their grandkids, based on denial alone. And some people call them generational curses. But a curse is a pretty strong thing. And that's a belief system. Even I've had my own generationals that I've had to shed myself, and I'm still working on that, my own identity outside of the traumas that I had to experience as a kid. But one thing I started in 2022, and I asked for this a long time ago, and it all started December 25th, 2021, when certain incidents unfolded for me. And the sequence of events, it was like from one rock led to a bigger rock, to a bigger rock led to a boulder. From a boulder, it was a landslide of a lot of things. And I didn't realize what I asked for totally. I didn't know the full weight of it, but realizing that full weight also gave me an opportunity to shed unnecessary trauma, unnecessary weight. And when we look at all these things, when we look at actually what has taken place, sometimes it can be a benefit when we shed all that weight, creates the slate clean, so to speak. People say, well, I got to restart. How many times have you seen people like when they do a New Year's resolution, this is going to be a fresh start? How many people have you heard say, once 2023 starts, I'm going to get better? And the same process and the same wavelength and the same thing happens over and over and over again. And they can't figure out why it keeps tearing them down. And the way that I have had to learn in my own progress, 50 years of living, I had a lot of unnecessary weight. And guess what? My pathways right now are based on, can I learn something new to process something better? And can I go back to something old and craft it to be something better also? The old and the new, and sometimes it's neutral. So, like I was talking about the anti here in Black Adam, there were scenes where he's exploring and he's kind of like talking about, the power of Shazam. He was talking about how, what, his uncontrolled rage led so much to supreme power. They had to capture this guy and put him in a tomb. And for thousands of years he was captured. He couldn't move. But he got his powers based on, and I won't ruin the movie, but you know, it's also something to explore. But we're going to get to approval in just a minute. What does also Gabe say? What can someone do to break the cycle of denial? That's a brilliant question, and I really do appreciate that, Gabe. Let me tell you, this is what I've done so far. And I got it. I first read it in Jack Canfield's book, Success Principles. He says that you're going to have to abandon all your excuses. That's number one. If you don't know, it's okay. When we abandon all our excuses why something didn't work, our shame, our guilt, when you abandon all that, guess what? That's the first energy. It's like the stamp. Boom, I've made my stake on the ground. I'm going up the mountain, no matter what it costs. When I look at those things and I look at those processes, now I can treat obstacle because I've had the experience. I've faced defeat before and I've faced success before. But do we remind ourselves of how we treated it before and why we're better now? The clean slate is you can apply all that experience, but doesn't mean you have to hold on to those traumas for long. It's very important that's the second step. And when abandoning the excuses, now it's like you're accepting everything that has existed as is and for what it's been, but now you're in the now. And the other part of that part 3 is how you make the steps in the now for future. So when you look at, how you're going to succeed, as an example, when you look at how you're going to succeed, it's because you were able to say, I don't want to complain. Like here's a few things that people will say. Don't complain. When you complain to others, it sets a vibrational presence about you. Don't gossip, right? Don't create idle gossip, idle conversation. When we look at those things, we look at the processes of how we live. When we look at, how we live versus how we can go forward, like how people treat money, like I was talking earlier before, how we actually approach using the tools of our earnings as a resource. So when it comes to, what can someone do to break the cycle is be willing to face yourself in the mirror. Being able to face yourself in the mirror, a lot of therapists, coaches will tell you will be the hardest thing out of the whole process to do. Because you can't you can try to lie to yourself. And trust me, I've done it. And it's hurt more people than helped. And it ruined relationships. It ruined my opportunities. And when I started to work on just like, hey, I'm transparent, I'm good with who I am. I don't need to be a superhero. I don't need to be a villain. I used to pride myself in being a villain sometimes. It didn't work. But when I looked at what really mattered to me, what was important, like last week, I was talking in my podcast, your mind, your matters, what truly is important to you. When I looked at those things, I looked at what's my health look like? What do I look like in the mirror? Do I approve of this guy first? Or am I looking for others to approve of me? Number 2, how much action am I putting into my life? Am I just talk? No. When I take the time to stop talking and doing more, the things that I wanted inside, the things that I asked for, I asked the universe, I asked God, I prayed for it. Guess what? Was given to me. But there's always one cosmetic agreement. There's always an exchange. You get a gift, you got to give. It's just that simple. It doesn't mean you have to give to everybody, but it means that, you get something that can assist you, assist others. And that's why I say my quote over and over again. Everybody is community built. You are not self-made, but you have self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you get to a place where you develop your spirit, your resonance, your strength, your internal fortitude, when you build those things, people remember that. You're believable without being the expert. I think that there's so much people talking about the experts, and there's so many people that want to discredit experts. But what does that do? And sometimes the experts have to go back to square one and relearning what they've already learned. I know my jujitsu instructors, like Charles Gracie, he always practices the basics. I give him approval. I give praise for that when he's willing to get down and just the basic roll over and over and over. It's part of the elements that gets you to that next level of mastery, and it rehearses the master, because no one truly becomes a master unless you're willing to consistently practice what you've learned every step of the way. Matter of fact, in another group, it was goals here on Clubhouse, and Kristen was talking about goals, and I added the thing where it was basically talking about, how do you treat books? Do you only look at self-help? Do you only look at fiction? What do you look at? And so how do you treat your imagination, your curiosity? Do you treat it to grow, or just treat it to like a how-to and know? And see, for a big part of my life now is curiosity, creativity they're my gems. And so now when I get to, now let's shift to the approval side of things. When I look at approval, I'm granted. I approved for me to go forward. I don't need to beat myself up. How many of us have done those negative self-describers, and you never realized how you never gave yourself approval? You never gave yourself space. And this is a big indication why I feel people, when I go into different audio spaces, this is a safe space. And the reason why they say this, to my thought, is because they've been threatened in their own mind first before anyone else. People constantly persist in judgments, qualifications. I have a new guest. Let's see. So what's denied in the context again, and denying for responsibilities of being denied by others? Could you restate that question a little? Could you put it a little bit more simply? Sukum, I would definitely appreciate that, because that's a very dynamic question, a multi-layered question. So earlier in the podcast, when I reach about 30 minutes, I go into a discussion point, because I am producing live on Clubhouse and YouTube, and this is going to be going there. So any of you who are watching on YouTube, Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 a.m. Eastern, I come live, but at 6:30, I begin the discussion points so that people can talk, and if they've, give me feedback or what their thoughts are, I explore that. So that is available to anyone if you're on the app, Clubhouse, you can do that. And this is for you. But going forward, let's see what else is asked. Okay, what does denying mean in the context of what you're talking? Denial means no pass. You don't go. To me, it means that's one part, but it also means sometimes I need to craft the experience, learn a little bit more. What does Gabe say? Gabe brought in, he says, I really like a lot when you're talking about this, and so vital to share, because people struggle with both approval and denial. Definitely appreciate that, Gabe. And what I'll say that is the pivots between denial and approval, there is an in between. There is that in between, that sometimes you're not necessarily approved and you're not necessarily denied. You're going, and you're figuring it out along the way. I think that's very, very important to both aspects, approval and denial. Sometimes it just time and experience and efforts just come to you, and they will fulfill. So when some people say, I don't have a purpose, I don't have a game plan, that's fine. You don't always have to. I know for a lot of guys, in the military, that structure, give me the game plan, give me the basics, give me the facts. I'm an experienced operator. Very important to them. But when they get out of the service, it becomes a whole different ball game. You're no longer wearing the uniform. Not everyone works with a sense of purpose or direction. So it's your level of understanding and your coherence with people. And I was reading Sakum's profile, and she says, I just let people be. I think that's a very, very important part about being in between. I can understand why they're denied or failed, and I can understand how they're approved and go forward. You know, and a lot of us, we want to give our inputs because I think in all innately, we don't want to see people stay stuck, stay failed. I like to see the better for you. Are you really out for that? And people say, well, I want to help people. I've heard it constantly. I want to help people succeed. But in return, very, very key, in return, I would like a reciprocal. I would love to receive, payment. They won't say it directly. They'll say it indirectly. And that's all, like a lot of the content creators out there. One of the biggest problems I see is getting followers and subscribers to continue giving you attention, and this gives you access to reward. If I say like have 1 million subscribers, the likelihood of my reach, say like to be funded, is going to be significantly more. I get paid, right? For talking. And that's great. But my whole new motto now is I don't want you to subscribe just for any reason. Here's what you're going to come across in Rise and Grind and with 72 the Architect. Number one, I'm going to give an open perspective that I invite all to come to the table to be able to learn, live, express. But if there's bullshit, I also accept you for where you're at. But be mindful of how persuasive you are, because then I'll shut you down. I'll just say thank you very much. Thanks for your consideration, your time, and move forward. And even I heard in a clubhouse room just the other day, a room was created about toxic families, right? And the speaker was so passionate and she wouldn't let go of the mic. She wanted people to, hey, I want somebody to take over. But because she had so much of a charge, like kind of like in Black Adam, they didn't know how to control their energy. Their hurt was spewing out. And I heard it in my voice. And I was like, and I interrupted. I said, hey, could you just breathe for a minute and take a pause? And their immediate response was, well, that's just how I roll. Been there, done that. But if you give your level self to pause just enough to let life catch up to you, and sometimes you to catch up to life, works out a little better. Works on, how many of us have been stuck? Yes, this is on YouTube right now, but it's actually both also producing live on Clubhouse. So I provide to a lot of different people. So as I get ready to wrap up for today, I'm going to do a part 2 to this on Wednesday. So 6 a.m. If you want to watch it live stream, you can do that and you can be available. But if you want to be a part of the post discussion, post show, that also is available on Clubhouse. Just find me, 72 the Architect, Rise and Grind. And like I said, I'll be back on Wednesday at 6 a.m. continuing the subject. So this is where I'm going to bring to a close, and we'll continue part 2 of Approved and Denied Wednesday, and we'll explore more. But I just want to thank all to the live YouTube and Facebook and Twitter space people that are listening to me. I appreciate you all, and share this with friends, family, and maybe someone who can use it and start processing a better way. And that's where I'm going to bring this to a close right there. All right, y'all. So have a great day. And I'm going to continue in just a moment on the Clubhouse, and you can find me, the Club Rise and Grind with 72. Just give me just a moment, folks.